Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak Europe podcast. Good morning. It's Tuesday, the 30th of December. I'm Stephen Carroll in London. Coming up today, the price of silver rebounds after plunging by the most in years as traders booked profits. We have a special report on how China's shadow LNG fleet is offering a lifeline to Putin. Plus, Arise Sir Idras, the UK's New Year's honours list is revealed, including knighthoods for the actor, as well as for the new ambassador to the US. Let's start with a roundup of our top stories. The price of silver is rebounding after its biggest one-day drop in more than 5 years. The white metal is trading around $74 an ounce, following a 9% slide in the previous session as traders booked profits following a powerful year-end rally. Mike McGlone is Senior Commodity Strategist at Bloomberg Intelligence.
The narratives that they're using now for pulling up silver have been around for years. We've all known about the demand from solar and everything. But to me now it's in that speculative excesses stage. And I think people are realizing it's much more beneficial maybe to allocate to some precious metals where there's only 4 versus cryptocurrencies where there's 28 million.
Mike McGlone speaking there as gold also regained its footing in trading today following its steepest drop in 2 months. Despite the sudden pullback this week, both precious metals are still on track for their best annual performances since 1979. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he will revise his country's negotiating position after claiming Ukrainian drones targeted his residence. According to the Kremlin, Putin told US President Trump of his decision in a call on Monday. Kyiv has cast the Russian claims as fabrication aimed at derailing the peace process. Here's Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, whose words are spoken by a translator.
On the night from the 28th to the 29th of December 2025, the Kyiv regime carried out a terrorist attack using 91 long-range attacking drones against the state residence of the Russian president in the Novgorod region. All drones were destroyed by the air defense system of the Russian armed forces. No information has been received regarding casualties or damage caused by the drone debris.
Lavrov added that Russia will retaliate and that targets had already been selected. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky dismissed the Russian claims as a new lie and warned that Moscow could be using it as an excuse to prepare an attack on government buildings in Kyiv. However, President Trump appeared to side with Putin while speaking with reporters.
It's one thing to be offensive, because they're offensive. It's another thing to attack his house. It's not the right time to do any of that, and can't do it. And I learned about it from President Putin today. I was very angry about it.
President Trump was speaking as one Kremlin advisor told Russian media that while Moscow intends to work closely with the US on peace efforts, it will reconsider a number of previously reached agreements. The US president, meanwhile, has threatened to strike Iran again if the country rebuilds its nuclear capacities. Speaking as he met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Donald Trump expressed concern that Iran is seeking to revive the program.
Now I hear that Iran is trying to build up again, and if they are, we're going to have to knock them down. We'll knock them down. We'll knock the hell out of them, but hopefully that's not happening. I heard Iran wants to make a deal. If they want to make a deal, that's much smarter. You know, they could have made a deal the last time before we went through, a big attack on them.
The US president also said he would support Israel in striking Iran if it continued with its ballistic missile program. The comments come as Tehran has seen a wave of protests after the local currency slumped to a record low, pushing up food prices and deepening an economic crisis in the sanctions-hit country. Pockets of London's so-called stockbroker belt suffered the biggest house price declines in 2025 as the southeast of England and the capital fell behind other regions. With more, here's Bloomberg's Chris Pitt.
The figures from Lloyds Bank reveal a chasm in house price growth between areas in and around the capital, the most expensive in the UK, and the rest of the country. The West Sussex town of Crawley and High Wycombe saw the biggest falls of any UK town or city, with prices there falling by 8.9% and 7.4% respectively. The figures are in stark contrast to large swathes of the rest of the UK, with Plymouth and the southwest of Stafford in the West Midlands topping the list for house price growth in 2025, with both areas enjoying increases of more than 12%. In London, Chris Pitt, Bloomberg Radio.
And more than 1,000 people have been recognised in the UK's New Year Honours list. Actress Idras Elba is being knighted, while Serena Wiegmann has been made an honorary dame after leading England's women's football team to back-to-back victories at the Euros. Former Olympic ice dancers Jane Torvill and Christopher Dean are also being honoured. They say they're thrilled with the accolade.
He was like a little kid jumping up and down. He couldn't sit still.
I mean, it's such an amazing award to receive this and an honour, and we're really humbled by it. We've been together for 50 years and skated and performed and entertained over all that time.
Jane Torvill and Christopher Dean speaking there. The UK's new ambassador to the US, Christian Turner, is also being knighted for services to foreign policy, alongside Barbara Woodward, a diplomat who will be named Deputy National Security Advisor and is set to become a dame. Well, those are your top stories on the markets. The MSCI Asia Pacific Index flat this morning. The Nikkei in Tokyo down 0.3%. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong, though, up by 1%. Eurostoxx 50 futures are just slightly lower this morning, as are S&P E-minis on Wall Street. The 10-year Treasury yield is up a basis point to 4.12%. In a moment, more on the volatility in gold and silver prices. Plus, a Bloomberg investigation takes you inside China's shadow LNG fleet that's offering a lifeline to Vladimir Putin. Another story that I've been reading this morning about the rise of the silver content creator. Bloomberg Opinion's Andrea Papuk has been writing about the wave of influencers who are gaining followers into their 60s and beyond. Take, for example, Aki and Koichi, who are a couple from California in their 70s, who are a huge hit on social media, showcasing their daily outfits. Now, Andrea writes this is both a reflection of how wealthy this generation is, but also how it particularly provides a voice for older women to reclaim their voice and visibility. She says it'll take more than a bunch of influencers to dismantle unconscious bias in the workplace that limits women's career progression. But she says we shouldn't dismiss the impact of the rise of these older influencers either. As populations age and people delay their retirement, these third-age influencers are restoring some relevance and legitimacy to age groups which are sidelined in many professions, and it signals to those born after 1980 that shaping tastes, sparking trends and driving product interest online doesn't have to fizzle out as the years pass, and you can still have digital clout for decades to come. Perhaps some comfort to those of us who are thinking ahead into the future. You can read Andrea's piece at bloomberg.com/opinion, and we'll put a link to it in our podcast show notes as well. Let's turn back to what's been happening on markets as well as that plunge that we've seen in silver and gold prices. Some rebound in trading today. Our Markets Live strategist Mark Cranfield is with us now for more. Mark, good to talk to you. So, pretty dramatic drops in silver in particular, down 9% yesterday. Gold down as much as 5%. Talk us through where things are trading today and what we should be reading into this volatility.
Both a little bit higher today. In fact, it's platinum, which is helping out quite a bit. That's helping to push silver higher. Gold is higher, but it's lagging behind the other two. Quite a bit of it, though, has got to do with the weakness in the US dollar, and some of that is because of the Chinese currency. As you were saying earlier, it's gone below dollar yuan. That's gone below 7 for the first time in a couple of years for the onshore market. So that's generally helping currencies. Australian dollar is one of the best performers today, and that's typically what happens when the yuan is also performing well. As far as silver is concerned, although it's rebounding slightly today, it probably isn't going to last, because the way in which it reversed after the cash market reached about 84 at one stage yesterday, we're trading down to 74 now. But during that reversal, it was on huge trading volumes. People talk about this time of year being quiet, thin liquidity. There is no indication at all that there was thin liquidity in the precious metals. In fact, if you look at the futures market, the combined volumes for Friday and Monday were the two biggest days of the year in 2025, even though it's December. So it shows you there's still a lot of people involved in the market, and the speed with which reverse suggests that silver will probably have a soft start to 2026.
I mean, the year-to-date figures are incredible for silver, nearly 160% higher, gold up some 67%. Should we expect to see as much of a focus on these precious metals into 2026 as we have this year?
Well, it's an unusual set of conditions which have come together to make precious metals in demand. And for the moment, those things are very much in place. So you have falling interest rates in the United States. We still expect Federal Reserve to lower interest rates a couple more times next year. You have a relatively weak US dollar. Chances are that the dollar will stay under pressure next year. That's all supportive of precious metals. In addition to that, you have a lot of geopolitical tension around the world, whether it's Ukraine, Russia, whether it's China, Taiwan, whether it's other parts of the Middle East as well. All of those things, in fact, some people would describe 2025 as one of the busiest year for geopolitics for a decade. Now, obviously, silver, gold are places that people tend to go to as a hedge against that. So you have this unusual situation where it's both being used as a hedge and as a play on what's happening in the monetary policy situation as well. It doesn't often come together at the same time. So all of those things are very much in place, and they will probably continue to support the precious metals into the early part of the year at least.
Mark, we've spoken many times over the past year on days when we've seen big market movements, but I wonder when you look back as the year as a whole, I mean, is it the geopolitics that characterise the moves we've seen on markets? Is 2025 going to be remembered as an exceptional year on markets?
I think what we've learned this year is the influence of governments is probably greater on financial markets than it's been for a very long time. So typically, if you're a trader, you look at what central banks are doing, you look at where they're positioned in terms of hiring, whether raising or lowering interest rates, what that means for various financial markets, and then governments are somewhere down the list. That has gone completely the other way around now. Clearly what's happening, and we see it particularly in the United States, in China, in Japan, the moves by governments, whether it's to influence fiscal policy, whether it's to influence geopolitics, is having a much greater weight on the thinking in financial markets, even than what central banks are doing. So that is a change which has really taken place this year and may well continue through into next year as well.
Okay, Mark, thanks so much for joining us for your analysis. As always, our Markets Live strategist, Mark Cranfield. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Daybreak Europe coming up after this. Now, a shipping network designed to circumvent restrictions on sanctioned Russian gas has been quietly growing thanks to cooperation between Beijing and Moscow. Russia has been working with China to create a parallel system similar to the one it uses for oil that's less vulnerable to Western intervention. Bloomberg has been investigating the extent of this network, and Stephen Stapczynski, who leads our team covering energy in Asia, joins us now for more. Stephen, good to talk to you. How big is this network of shadow vessels that's moving Russian LNG?
So we've been able to identify 15 vessels that are in the shadow fleet, linking either to Russia or to China. Now, this is relatively small in the grand scheme of things. The shadow oil fleet has over 1,000 vessels. But I think what's interesting here is this is just the beginning. There are more vessels that could potentially be added. As they get older, generally the shadow fleet operates on older vessels. And there are now 10% of the global LNG fleet that are over 20 years old. That is potentially, going to be scrapped. They're seen as dinosaurs. They're too old to continue operating. And that's where the shadow fleet kind of operates, in that realm where the people behind the scenes could potentially decide to buy these vessels. Instead of it going to the scrapyard, they offer a little bit more money to get them, turn them dark, and start delivering the sanctioned fuel from Russia to China.
Talk to us about the role that China's playing in I suppose, creating this fleet.
So what's interesting is it's not just helping to create the fleet, but they're also the buyer, right? You can't have a shadow fleet if you just have people selling the LNG and putting it on the water and going places. That's what happened in 2024. The U.S. the Biden administration slapped sanctions on Russia's Arctic LNG 2 facility in northern Russia in 2023. When it began producing, they just couldn't find any buyers. No one wanted to touch it. The Biden administration sanctioned all the LNG vessels that went to the facility, the shadow fleet ships. And no one wanted it. But now in 2025, the Chinese have basically designated one LNG import terminal in southern China called Beihai to just only take sanctioned LNG from Russia. That's likely to help insulate their other companies which buy LNG from the United States and other Western nations that have slapped sanctions on Russia. And so, one, they're a buyer. Two, they're helping to start to collect some vessels. 2 ships have been identified that have not been sanctioned yet by the United States or Western authorities. that are helping to ferry fuel from sanctioned Russian plants or Russian ships. Now, all of this together is creating sort of this network that is allowing Russia to export the sanctioned fuel, and again, sort of mimic that parallel network that we saw built for oil.
This is a fascinating piece of reporting, Stephen. Can you talk us a little bit through how you and the team managed to track these ships?
Yeah, I mean, first off, there is a lot of these ships have AIS. They have tracking systems in them. So we're able to see where they're going and when they pick up sanctioned fuel. Now, the Chinese ships are a bit trickier. We have to look at basically, we talk to brokers to figure out how these ships are being purchased or sold. When an old ship is purchased by an unknown company, that kind of puts off an alarm bell within the industry that says, hey, maybe this ship is trying to go dark. Now, there was one ship called CCH Gas that did a ship-to-ship transfer with a sanctioned Russian vessel, and we were able to track it from the very beginning with satellites. When the ship docked next to the sanctioned vessel, we got a tip-off. We were able to take satellite pictures. I've also been able to track what's happening on the CCH Gas and other ships because of social media posts by the recruiters that have helped recruit crew for the ship, as well as seafarers who have posted pictures on Instagram, which is very interesting. The age of social media is as well giving transparency to things that probably these ship owners and operators don't want transparency for.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.